Dangerously in Love. Episode 36. The new surprise, a missed flight, a tiny secret, and news that changes their future forever. The honeymoon was supposed to end peacefully. Supposedly. At the airport, Advik sat calmly reading emails while Sia sat beside him eating snacks, lots of snacks, an alarming amount of snacks. After her third sandwich, Advik lowered his phone and asked if she was hungry. She said very. He reminded her that she had breakfast 2 hours ago, pancakes, waffles, and even his waffles. She said they looked lonely. He stared. Marriage was exhausting. Then disaster struck, naturally. Boarding closed. Sia froze. Advik froze. The airline employee apologized and said the flight had left without them. Silence. Complete silence. Then Sia slowly pointed at Advik and said this was his fault. He asked how it was his fault. She said he was reading emails. He said she was shopping. She said she was supporting the local economy. An hour later, the newlyweds were stuck overnight at the resort. Neither was particularly upset, especially after discovering the presidential suite was available. Sia sighed dramatically about such tragedy and asked how they would survive. Advik rolled his eyes and said bravely, "The next morning, things became strange. Very strange." Sia looked pale, then ran toward the bathroom. Advik followed immediately, concern replacing amusement. She said she was fine, then 5 seconds later admitted she was not fine. Now he was worried. Very worried. By afternoon, he had already contacted 3 doctors, booked a private appointment, and nearly caused a national emergency. When Sia told him he needed to calm down, he said she had fainted. She said she sneezed. He said it looked suspicious. Hours later, the doctor smiled while reviewing the test results, a very suspicious smile, the kind doctors have before delivering life-changing news. Advik instantly became nervous and asked if everything was okay. The doctor looked at Sia, then at Advik, then smiled wider and said, "More than okay." Silence. What does that mean? The doctor handed over the report and spoke 5 words, "Congratulations. You're having a baby." Everything stopped completely. Sia blinked once, twice, 3 times, and shouted, "What?" Across the room, Advik looked frozen, like someone had unplugged his brain. When the doctor asked if he was all right and called him Mr. Rezoda, there was still no response. Finally, he managed to say, "Baby?" The doctor nodded. "Baby." Then Advik smiled, a real smile Sia had never seen before, pure happiness, pure wonder, pure love. Unexpectedly, his eyes filled with tears. Sia immediately softened because Advik Rezoda rarely cried, almost never, yet here he was speechless, emotional, completely overwhelmed. Slowly, he took her hand and asked, "Really?" Sia looked down at the report, then back at him, a smile spreading across her face. "Really?" For several moments, neither spoke. Neither needed to. Everything had changed again, but this time in the most beautiful way possible. That evening, the couple sat together on the beach, the same beach where they had found the honeymoon treasure. The waves rolled gently onto the shore, and the sunset painted the sky gold. Advik wrapped an arm around Sia, protective, loving, happy, then rested his hand lightly over hers, over the tiny new life they had just discovered. "Our family." The words sounded unreal, yet perfect. Sia smiled. Our family. And for the first time, their greatest adventure wasn't behind them. It was only beginning. Dangerously in Love. Episode 37. Baby Rezoda, overprotective Advik and craving disasters. The moment they returned home, everything exploded. Not literally, though with Sia around, that possibility always existed. The first person to find out was Rohan, which was a huge mistake, because Rohan immediately screamed. Actually screamed. "Ladies and gentlemen." Advik closed his eyes. "No. There is a baby. Rohan. A baby." Within 10 minutes, both families knew. Within 20 minutes, the entire mansion looked like a festival. There were flowers, gifts, sweets, celebrations, and an unreasonable amount of baby clothes. "Why are there tiny shoes?" Sia asked. Her grandmother smiled. "Preparation. The baby isn't even born yet." Preparation. Advik wisely stayed silent. Meanwhile, Sia discovered something unexpected: pregnancy cravings. Terrifying pregnancy cravings. At 2:17 a.m., Advik's phone rang, and he immediately answered. What's wrong? I need mango ice cream. Silence. It's 2 in the morning. I know. And I need mango ice cream. 30 minutes later, Advik Rayzodda, billionaire businessman, stood inside a convenience store searching for mango ice cream in pajamas and questioning every life choice. The next morning, things became worse because Sia wanted something very specific. Mango ice cream. Okay. With chocolate syrup. Fine. On pizza. Silence. On what? Pizza. Advik stared long and hard. That's illegal. It sounds delicious. It sounds criminal. Unfortunately, she made him buy it, and somehow, she loved it. Everyone else was horrified, especially Oriv. I think the baby is already plotting world domination. Sia nodded. Good. Meanwhile, Advik had become ridiculously overprotective. Don't run. I wasn't. Don't jump. I wasn't. Don't climb. I wasn't. Don't. Advik. Yes. I'm sitting. Oh. Everyone laughed except Advik. He was serious. Very serious. Because every time he looked at Sia, he remembered she wasn't alone anymore, and suddenly nothing mattered more than keeping both of them safe. One evening, Sia walked into the nursery being prepared for the baby. The room was beautiful, with soft colors, tiny furniture, stuffed animals, and one very emotional husband. Advik stood near the crib, quiet and thoughtful, and for once, he wasn't speaking. Sia smiled. What are you thinking about? He looked at the tiny crib, then at her, then gently placed a hand over her stomach. Our baby will sleep here. His voice sounded amazed, as if he still couldn't believe it. Sia's heart melted. Yeah. A small smile appeared on his face. I can't wait to meet them. For a moment, neither joked nor teased. They simply stood together, dreaming about the future, a future filled with tiny footsteps, tiny laughs, tiny hands, and endless love. Then suddenly, kick. Sia gasped. What? Advik asked, and then another kick followed. His eyes widened. No way. Slowly, she guided his hand, and then, kick. The baby kicked again. Advik froze completely, his eyes becoming suspiciously shiny. Kicked. That was. The baby. For the first time in his life, Advik Rayzodda looked utterly speechless. Then he smiled, the biggest smile Sia had ever seen. And in that moment, she knew that no matter what happened, no matter how chaotic life became, their child would always be loved unconditionally, completely, forever. Dangerously in Love. Episode 38. The grand baby shower, family chaos, emotional surprises, and a prediction that leaves everyone shocked. 7 months later, the Rayzodda mansion had transformed into complete chaos. Again. This time, for Sia's baby shower. The garden looked magical. Thousands of flowers decorated every corner, golden lanterns hung from trees, and soft music floated through the air. Family and friends filled the venue, and everyone was excited, emotional, and full of opinions, especially about the baby. It's definitely a boy. No, it's a girl. Boy. Girl. Boy. Girl. The argument had lasted 40 minutes. Nobody had evidence, and nobody cared. Meanwhile, Sia sat on a beautifully decorated swing, looking absolutely radiant. She wore a stunning pastel pink anarkali gown adorned with delicate floral embroidery, her long hair flowing in soft curls with fresh flowers woven into her hairstyle. Her pregnancy glow made her look breathtaking, and even Advik couldn't stop staring. Rohan immediately noticed. Stop looking at your wife. No. You've been staring for 10 minutes. Your point. I was trying to have a conversation. Sounds difficult. Rohan looked personally offended. Across the garden, Sia was enjoying herself, mostly. Until someone mentioned baby names. Then disaster struck. I like Orush. No. Vivon. No. Oriv. Oriv Malhotra immediately looked suspicious. Why are you naming the baby after me? Everyone laughed. Then suddenly, Sia gasped, and the entire party froze immediately. Advik appeared beside her. "What's wrong?" The baby kicked. The entire family rushed forward like an invading army. "Move. Let me see. I was here first." Within seconds, everyone was arguing again. Sia burst out laughing because this child wasn't even born yet and was already the center of attention. Later that evening, a surprise guest arrived, an elderly woman wearing a simple white saree. Nobody recognized her except Rudra, whose eyes widened. "Mrs. Sharma?" The woman smiled. She was an old family friend, someone who had known Sia's parents many years ago. She slowly approached Sia, then gently placed her hand over Sia's stomach. A peaceful smile appeared on her face, and the garden became silent. For several moments, the elderly woman said nothing. Then she whispered, "This child carries extraordinary light." Everyone exchanged confused looks. "What does that mean?" Naina asked. Mrs. Sharma smiled. "It means this baby will bring happiness wherever they go." Sia smiled warmly, but then the elderly woman looked directly at Advik, and her smile widened. "Just like their mother." Advik immediately grinned. Sia rolled her eyes. "She's talking about me. Obviously." "No, she isn't." "She absolutely is." The argument continued for 10 minutes, much to everyone's amusement. As the celebration came to an end, family members shared blessings, friends shared memories, and laughter echoed throughout the garden. Then came one final surprise. The giant screen behind the stage suddenly lit up, and a video began playing: photos, memories, moments, the charity gala, the first dance, the rainy proposal, the wedding, the honeymoon, the baby announcement. Every beautiful chapter of their story. Sia's eyes filled with tears, and Advik quietly slipped his hand into hers, holding it tightly because he knew this wasn't just a celebration of a baby. It was a celebration of everything they had survived together, everything they had built, and everything still waiting ahead. As fireworks lit up the night sky, Sia rested her head on Advik's shoulder, and for the first time in a very long time, life felt perfect. Almost perfect. Because at that exact moment, a loud voice shouted from across the garden, "I think the baby just stole my cupcake." Everyone turned. A small child stood beside the dessert table, pointing dramatically at Sia. The entire party exploded into laughter, and Advik sighed because, apparently, even before birth, baby Rayzoda was already causing trouble. Dangerously in Love. Episode 39. Baby Rayzoda arrives, a midnight emergency and the most beautiful day of their lives. It started at 2:43 a.m., when Advik was finally sleeping peacefully for once. There were no business calls, no family drama, and no mysterious villains, just sleep. Then Sia suddenly sat upright, eyes wide, and called out, "Advik." He nearly fell off the bed. "What happened?" he asked, instantly alarmed. Sia looked at him and said, "The baby." Advik panicked immediately. "What about the baby?" he demanded. "I think it's time," she replied. For a moment, there was complete silence before he exploded into chaos. "It's time," he shouted. Within 3 minutes, the entire Rayzoda mansion was awake. Lights turned on, doors opened, and people ran everywhere, though nobody really knew where they were going. They were just running, just in case. Meanwhile, Advik was somehow making everything worse. "Where are the hospital bags?" he asked. "By the door," came the answer. "Good," he said. "You're holding them." "Oh." "Where are the car keys?" "In your hand." "Oh." "Advik," Sia said. "Yes." "Take a deep breath." "I'm breathing." "No, you're hyperventilating." Rohan walked in, took one look at Advik, and burst out laughing. "The billionaire has finally crashed," he said. "Not helping," Advik snapped. An hour later, they arrived at the hospital, and the doctors immediately took Sia inside. Just like that, Advik was forced to wait, which was his least favorite activity. Hours passed slowly and painfully. The entire family gathered, nobody slept, and nobody left. Even Oriv arrived carrying coffee, mostly for Advik, who still hadn't sat down in 3 hours. "You need to relax," Oriv told him. "I am relaxed," Advik insisted. Oriv looked at him and said, "No, fine," Advik muttered, though he clearly wasn't. Because behind those hospital doors was the most important person in his world, along with their child. Finally, a doctor emerged, and everyone stood. Instantly. "Mr. Rayzodder?" the doctor asked. Advik's heart stopped. "Yes," he replied. The doctor smiled, a warm and beautiful smile, and said, "Congratulations." For 1 second, everything froze. Then the doctor spoke the words everyone had been waiting for. "Your baby girl is healthy." Silence followed, and then complete happiness. A baby girl. Advik actually forgot how to speak. He managed. The doctor laughed and nodded. "Yes. A girl." Across the room, the family erupted into cheers, tears, hugs, and celebration, but Advik barely heard any of it because he was already moving toward Sia, toward his family. The moment he entered the room, his eyes immediately found her. She looked tired, exhausted, and beautiful. Sia smiled softly and said, "Hi." Advik's eyes filled with tears. "Hi," he whispered back. Then the nurse carefully placed a tiny bundle into his arms. His daughter. His little girl. For a moment, the world disappeared. She was tiny, perfect, and beautiful, and when a tiny hand wrapped around his finger, something inside him changed forever. He was no longer just a husband, no longer just a businessman, and no longer just Advik Rayzodder. He was a father. The realization hit him all at once, and he cried immediately. Sia laughed weakly and said, "You're crying." Advik looked at her and replied, "So are you." "Fair," she admitted. Together, they looked down at their daughter, their miracle, their greatest adventure, and their greatest love. "What should we name her?" Sia whispered. Advik smiled and looked at the tiny girl sleeping peacefully in his arms. "I think," he began, but before he could finish, the baby suddenly opened her eyes and immediately sneezed. It was tiny, adorable, and perfect. Then she sneezed again and accidentally spit milk on Advik's expensive shirt. The entire room burst into laughter. Sia laughed so hard she cried, Rohan nearly fell over, and Advik stared at the stain for a long moment before smiling. Somehow, it was already his favorite shirt and his favorite day ever. Dangerously in Love. Episode 40. Daddy's Princess, Sleepless Nights and One Tiny Boss. 3 days after the birth, Advik Rayzodder learned a very important lesson. His daughter was the real boss of the family. Not him. Definitely not him. At exactly 3:07 a.m., the baby cried, and Advik jumped awake instantly. "What's wrong?" he asked, while Sia groaned from beneath the blanket. "She's hungry." "Oh." 5 minutes later, the baby cried again. Advik sat upright once more. "Now what?" "Diaper." "Oh." 10 minutes later, the crying started again. "What happened this time?" Sia looked at him and said, "She exists." Silence followed. "That's it. That's it." For the first time in his life, Advik discovered that newborn babies operated entirely on chaos, much like their mother. The next morning, the entire family arrived with gifts and opinions, mostly opinions. The first question that immediately started another family war was, "What are you naming her?" "Odhyo." "No Anaya." "No Avni." "No Princess." Everyone looked at Advik. "That's not a name." "It should be." Sia laughed because the mighty Advik Rayzodder had become completely obsessed with his daughter, hopelessly, ridiculously, adorably. The tiny baby sneezed, and Advik panicked. "Call the doctor." Sia stared at him. It was a sneeze. What if she's sick? It was One sneeze. What if Advik? Okay. He was not okay. Later that evening, the family gathered in the mansion garden for the naming ceremony. Tiny fairy lights sparkled overhead, fresh flowers decorated every corner, and the baby slept peacefully in Sia's arms, completely unaware of the chaos surrounding her. After much arguing, much debating, and one dramatic speech from Rohan, a final name was chosen, Orohi Rayzodder. The moment the priest announced it, everyone smiled because it felt perfect, strong, beautiful, and joyful, just like the little girl herself. Orohi Rayzodder, Sia whispered softly, immediately falling in love with the name. Advik looked at his daughter, then at Sia, then back at his daughter, and his heart melted all over again. Later that night, the mansion finally became quiet, for once. Sia sat beside the nursery crib, watching little Orohi sleep, with her tiny blanket, tiny fingers, and tiny yawns. Everything about her felt magical. Then warm arms wrapped around her shoulders. Advik kissed the top of her head and asked, "Tired?" "Very." "Happy?" "Very." He smiled. "Me too." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply watched their daughter, the little miracle that had changed everything. Then suddenly, Orohi opened one eye, looked directly at Advik, and smiled, a real smile, tiny, sweet, and perfect. Advik froze. "Did you see that?" "Yes." She smiled. "Yes. At me. At you." Advik looked dangerously close to crying again, and Sia laughed. "You cry a lot now. I'm a father." As if that's an explanation. It is. They both laughed softly. Outside the nursery window, the moonlight shone gently across the garden. Inside, a new chapter had begun, not a chapter about danger, not a chapter about secrets, but a chapter about family, about love, and about one tiny girl who already had her father wrapped around her little finger, completely, forever. Episode 41 of Dangerously in Love, Orohi's first birthday, cake disaster, family competition, and a beautiful surprise. 1 year later, the Reisoda mansion was once again overflowing with decorations, balloons, flowers, fairy lights, and enough cake to feed an entire city because today was very special. It was Orohi Reisoda's first birthday, and the tiny baby who had stolen everyone's hearts was no longer so tiny. She had Advik's sharp eyes, Sia's beautiful smile, and, unfortunately, both of their stubborn personalities. The birthday girl arrived wearing a gorgeous lavender princess dress decorated with tiny pearls and silver butterflies. Her soft curls were held back with a sparkling little tiara, and she looked absolutely adorable. Advik immediately took 57 photos. Sia laughed and told him that was enough, but he refused, until she pointed out that Orohi was trying to eat his phone. He looked down and saw that his daughter was indeed chewing on the corner of his phone, and he admitted, "Fair." The party officially began and immediately turned competitive because every family member wanted to be Orohi's favorite. Rohan proudly announced that he had taught her how to wave, Sia replied that she had taught her how to say mama, and Oriv added that he had bought her the giant teddy bear. Advik crossed his arms and said, "I'm her father." Nobody argued with that, because unfortunately, that was a winning point. Everything was going perfectly until cake time. The giant 3-tier birthday cake was rolled into the garden, everyone gathered around, photos were taken, candles were lit, and Orohi clapped excitedly. Then disaster struck. Tiny disaster. Orohi reached forward, grabbed a fistful of frosting, and launched it directly at Advik. Frosting splattered across half his face, the garden fell silent for a second, and then everyone exploded with laughter. Even Sia nearly fell over laughing. Advik slowly wiped frosting from his cheek and looked at his daughter, who giggled with the exact same mischievous laugh as Sia. Rohan whispered that she had inherited her mother's chaos, and Oriv agreed. Then Orohi grabbed more frosting, everyone ran, except Sia, who got hit next. For the next 10 minutes, the elegant birthday party became a cake battle, with adults running from a 1-year-old and somehow losing. Later that evening, as the sun began to set and the celebration grew quieter, the family gathered together in the garden, sharing stories, laughing, and making memories. Then Vikram stood up holding a small wooden box, his expression unusually emotional. He called Sia's name, and the garden became silent. Slowly, he handed her the box and told her it was something her parents wanted her to have. Sia froze, then carefully opened it. Inside was a beautiful silver locket and a handwritten letter she had never seen before. Tears immediately filled her eyes. The letter had been written shortly before her parents' deaths, and inside were simple words filled with love and hope. At the very bottom was a final message: "One day you'll build a family of your own. When that day comes, know that we are proud of you. Always." A tear slipped down Sia's cheek, then another, and Advik immediately wrapped an arm around her and held her close. For the first time, the pain of losing her parents didn't feel quite so heavy, because she knew they would have loved this. They would have loved Orohi. They would have loved Advik. And they would have been proud of the life she had built. As the stars appeared overhead, Sia looked around at her husband, her daughter, her family, and the people she loved, and her heart felt full. After every challenge, every heartbreak, and every adventure, she had found exactly what her parents wanted for her: a home, a family, and a love that was truly dangerously in love. 2 years later, Orohi ran through the mansion garden while Advik chased after her and failed miserably. Sia watched from the porch, laughing, because some things never changed, especially the fact that the tiny princess still ruled the entire Rayzada family. And honestly, nobody wanted it any other way. The end. Red Heart Hash.
Thank you for listening. This is the last part. And stay updated for new story, and don't forget the subscriber comment channel. And if you want, you can recommend any topic for stories that you like.